So now let's look at some elbow pummeling, both offensively and defensively. Now, we understand that we can switch sides as we wish by just pummeling our hands and elbows into different positions. So if I'm on the underhook side and I want to switch to the overhook side, I don't have to pull my partner to the opposite hip. I can just switch from the underhook to the overhook side. If I want to switch from the overhook to the underhook side, I don't have to pull my partner across to the other side. I can just use pommeling where I pommel my elbow inside hers in the bottom and I switch to the underhook side. Now, this goes both ways. While I can switch sides, my partner can also use her elbows to pommel to switch sides. So for example, if we're on the underhook side, my partner now can take her right elbow, she has defensive hands in, and she can pommel inside my left arm, or inside my right arm rather. So now I'm on the underhook side, or I'm on the overhook side technically, but both my arms are on the overhook side. Both my arms are over my partner's shoulders. So now I have no real control hand. So now she scoots out and away and brings her elbow down to the floor. Now there's no real control of my partner because again, there's no wedge of my elbow in between her elbow and her rib cage. So when she goes to scoot her elbow out and away from me, it's pretty easy from here. So we're going to look at how we can deal with our partner pommeling her elbow inside mine to force me to a double overhook position and how we can adjust from here. All right, because right here, when I go to pommel my underhook back in place, as I go to do that, she has her elbow to the floor. Now she slips her head out and away, and her elbow's coming down, and now I'm losing my partner's back from here. So we're looking at how we can deal with a partner who's effective at elbow pommeling inside my elbow to force me to a double overhook position to where I have no control hands. Okay, again, we talked about having always one control hand and one strangle hand. One control hand, one strangle hand. If we have two control hands, this is great for control, but we can't finish anybody. If we have two strangle hands, we're much more dangerous, but we have little to no control, and our partner can only take seconds in certain cases to escape, and now we lost it back entirely. Okay, so we're going to look at how we can deal with our partner who's good at elbow pommeling to get two of my arms over the shoulders with no control hands, and look to start getting her shoulders and hips out to the floor. All right, so let's look at the first, most basic method of dealing with a elbow pommel from the underhook side. It's just a simple extraction and reinsertion of my bottom hand. All right, so let's say my partner goes to pommel her elbow inside. From here, whenever I see this, as my partner goes to pommel the elbow inside, I just extract my elbow. Now the issue is, if you try to pull your elbow straight back, you will always lose the battle for head position. So if she goes to pommel her elbow inside and I move back and away, now the elbow comes inside and her head moves out to the side. And now if she bridges over my arm, she's free. Okay? So it's very important that we extract in the correct way. When she goes to pommel her elbow inside, I take my elbow underneath my own body, like so. So now when she goes to bring her head to the floor, I still have my head as a wedge between myself and her. When she goes to tuck that elbow in tight, I just straighten my fingers and I blade my hand like so. So that now when I'm going to reinsert my hand, I extend my hand down towards her elbow, and when the elbow goes to tuck in tight, you can always create distance between the elbow and the rib cage. Again, there's a very specific way you have to do this. If you do the traditional way, where she goes to pommel the elbow, you try to do this, you're always going to lose her. Now the head's way far away, this is a disaster. So as she goes to pommel that elbow inside, we take the left shoulder, the top shoulder forwards, right elbow comes underneath her own body. Now her head's in good shape. When she goes to move around, we're in good position here. Now, we straighten the fingers like so. We shoot down towards the elbow, and as she goes to keep that elbow nice and tight and scoot over my arm, we can always manage to get back underneath our partner's elbow, and now we're back in business, ready to attack. Okay? You have to tuck your elbow underneath your body in order to extract your hand. You can't just pull your elbow straight back because now your head's way far away from your partner's. You have to find a way to extract your hand and keep good head positioning. If you don't do anything, what's going to happen is you keep good head positioning, your partner goes to pommel the elbow in. Now you can't pull your elbow back because if you do, you lose the head positioning. And now your partner starts to slip the elbow inside, and 2 seconds later, you're gone and you lost the whole position. So as you see your partner going to pommel that elbow, we're back inside and we're ready to go. Okay, very subtle, but very important. Another way that we can pommel, we can stop elbow pommels, is by using a series of gripping methods, right? Where as our partner goes to pommel an elbow inside, from here we have to create space between my partner's elbow and her rib cage, right? So whenever I see my partner going to pommel inside, we're going to look to take our hand across, and we out pommel our partner's primary defensive hand. Usually the hand position is here when they go to pommel their elbows inside. As she goes to take her elbow inside my elbow, I pommel my hand inside and around my partner's wrist, and we catch a cross wrist grip like so. So that now my partner's goal is to scoot out in this direction and slip her left elbow in between our two bodies. So as she goes to move out and away, I lift the cross wrist like so, and now when she goes to move her body out and away, we just take our hand underneath and we catch. And we move to a figure four backhand and arm. And now we use this to recapture and replace our head positioning, and now we're in business, ready to go back into our attacks. So our partner has defensive hands in place. She pommels an elbow inside intelligently. We pommel around and we catch. Now, as my partner goes to escape, we lift the cross wrist. Now, most of the time, as we lift the cross wrist, my partner's going to get the head out. Because as I lift the cross wrist, it pulls her head forwards, and now she can easily take her head out to the floor, right? So we know that we're going to lose head positioning, but we're going to gain a control hand, which is a far wrist, like so. Now we switch, we go straight wrist with the one-on-one, and we move back to our same recovery that we looked at before. We catch a false grip we place a false grip over our partner's neck on the far side. We pull our head underneath, and if we have to, we pull our partner completely underneath us. And then fall to the opposite side, ready to go into attacks. So it's the same thing as before, we're just using a different setup. So we are getting beat by a partner who slips the elbow inside. We use a cross wrist to elevate our partner's elbow, and as the head comes free, we get to a far wrist. Now from here, we can either move our head back to position. If her back and hips haven't slid out too far away from me, now we have realigned the center lines. Or if she's moved out and away so far, now we can switch to a long hook and look to pull our partner back on top of us. Pivot out to the side. Now we're ready to punch a strangle in for the win. Okay, so we can use a extraction and reinsertion method by tucking the elbow underneath us, or a cross grip method where you pull the elbow towards us and your partner's head comes out and away, and she starts to make an escape. Then we go into the same recoveries that we did before, getting to a far wrist, using a false grip, and pulling ourselves back underneath our partner. So now we're going to look at when our partner forces us to play with double overhooks. Now, in most situations, it's not acceptable to play with double overhooks because of the fact that we have no control arm. All right, so we're going to look at a situation both right now with double overhooks, where we have two hands above our partner's shoulders, so two strangle hands, I should say, rather, and two underhooks, where we have two control hands underneath our partner's armpits. All right, and the acceptable time to play with those for extended amounts of time. When our partner effectively hits an elbow pommel and forces us to have two strangle hands on top of our partner's shoulders, we immediately have to punch our way back to one control hand. Okay, if we're on a hip, we can't have two strangle hands, right? It doesn't work like that. We need to have one control hand here, or switch and have one control hand here, right? It's unacceptable to be on a hip against a talented opponent and be looking to neck pommel underneath our partner's neck with 2 strangle hands. But there is one acceptable time where it is permissible to use 2 of my hands above our partner's neck like so, or above our partner's shoulders like so. It's when my partner is directly on top of me, okay? Just know, when your partner is directly on top of you, it makes it easier for you to take 2 hands above your partner's shoulders and go for strangles because of the fact that your partner can't escape from this position, okay? When your partner is in this position, she needs to pick a side first in order to escape. So if she stays here, she has no ability to move her head out and away from mine. She has to fall to a side first, and now she can start to go into her escapes. If she falls to a side first, that gives me the ability to pick where I want to be. If she falls to her right side and I want to be on the underhook side, I punch an underhook in. If she falls to her right side and I want to be on the overhook side, I punch an overhook in. And now, this makes it incredibly easy for me to predict where my partner is going to go and which hand I want to punch in as they fall to that side, okay? So the only time it's acceptable to play with double overhooks, when my partner forces me there, is if my partner has her hips directly on top of mine and we're not on either side. We can't be on the hip. We have to be facing straight up towards the ceiling with my partner's body weight on top of mine, okay? So just so you know, the only acceptable time to play with double overhooks and 2 strangle hands is when our partner's directly on top of us. It's unacceptable to play with 2 strangle arms when we're on one hip or the other. Because now I have no control hand and my partner can start to make her way towards an escape, and the lack of a control hand is going to make it exceedingly difficult to be able to control your partner from escaping. So the only time we can play with our partner, with our 2 hands above our partner's shoulders, with 2 strangle hands and no control hands, is when our partner has hips directly on top of ours. And we're going to go into some attacks and some more explanation about how we can attack our partner when their hips are above ours. All right, so now let's look at the problem that we have with our partner when we have her hips higher than my hips. And by higher, I mean further up towards my head than my hips are. So if her hips, for example, are on top of my hips, this isn't really an issue. But the second her hips move higher than my hips up towards my head, so right now, my hip line is here and her hip line is down here. But if her hip line moves above my hip line, now this is going to make it extremely hard to finish my partner. Even if I lock a strangle in, it's just my arms doing the work. I have no ability to throw my hips and my chest and everything else into my partner. So it's incredibly hard to finish your partner with a strangle from this position. So anytime we're working from a double overhook situation, and this will kind of be a segue into finishing from the back, which we'll do next. This will be some of our first finishes from here. Whenever we're working from a double overhook situation, and again, only permissible when our partner's laying on top of us, we have to make sure that our partner's hips are lower than our hips. Otherwise, you won't be able to finish our partner or pommel effectively. If you feel like your partner is doing a great job of taking your hips up higher than yours, and you feel like you're not having any success from here, and you just want your partner to fall to a hip, just know that you can always push your partner to one side or the other. If I'm just sick of this and I don't want my partner to move to one side, and maybe I'm trying to lean to one side, but she has a wide base of her legs, and I feel like I can't knock my partner over to one side, just pommel a butterfly hook in underneath your partner's legs. And now, as you go to lift, your partner will always fall to one side. Okay? So if you're just sick of this and you want your partner to knock your partner over and pick a side, you can choose to punch either the underhook side or the overhook side in. Doesn't make a difference. And when she goes to base out with her leg, you just use a butterfly hook to lift, and you can push your partner's hips lower than yours all the time, and now you can start your traditional attacks on one side or the other, and now you're back to square one going in for attacks. Okay, so worst case scenario, you don't want your partner on top of you, you can just use a butterfly hook to kick them off and pick a side. Now, let's say your partner is on top of you and you can keep their hips lower than yours. This is a perfect time to use double overhooks. So if your partner forces you into double overhooks, for example, and tries to start, hits an elbow pommel inside, double overhooks, hits the elbow pommel inside. Let's say maybe from here you grab a far wrist and you pull her and she comes with you. Or you go to a false grip here and you pull her. And anytime your partner ends up on top of you, you start going in. And now you have a lack of control because you don't have a hand underneath with a control hand, but you have an incredible ability to punch strangle hands in. Okay? And because your partner's on top of you, she has no ability to escape unless she picks a side. And if she does, then you punch a control hand in. So when our partner's on top of us, we're going to start going into something we call neck pommeling. We pommel to get underneath our partner's chin with our two hands. We're fighting against our partner's neck. So she has defensive hands in place, and we're going to start to look to come underneath our partner's neck. Now, as underneath our partner's chin, as she pulls one hand back, the second hand comes underneath that hand, and every time I come underneath my partner's or across my partner's face, so she has defensive hands, I look to start lifting her chin up. So now, when my second hand comes in, we come underneath that hand. And then as she pulls that hand back, we come underneath that hand. So the whole time we're pulling our partner's chin up until eventually we can get a hand through, and now we can go in and get ready for a strangle. So what it'll look like is we're in here, she has defensive hands, we're punching hands through. We're punching hands through. And the whole time, as she's fighting, we're looking to raise that jaw until eventually one hand slips through. And with two hands working at the same time, it's incredibly difficult for your partner to worry about or to use her hands defensively. Then the second a hand comes through, we immediately lock up. And now, if our partner brings her hips higher than mine, it's going to be difficult to strangle. So the second we lock up, we immediately take our partner to one side, where now her hips are lower than mine, and we can look to go in and finish a strangle. So we play with hands on top, our partner's lying on top of us, and now from here we look to go into neck pommeling, where she goes to defend, she goes to bring in defensive hands, and every time I look to get my hand underneath her jaw and make space for two hands to come underneath until eventually I can get a strangle in, and now go in. We can pick a side using butterfly hook to knock our partner over. And now we're ready to go in and get to a win with double overhooks, where we have two strangle hands instead of two control hands, or a control and a strangle hand. So if your partner forces you to double overhooks, where you only have two strangle hands with no control hand, you have to either fight back to get a control hand, or bring your partner on top of you, pull your partner on top of you in some way to start neck pommeling and get to a finish with two offensive strangle hands. We've looked at controlling our partner's back. Everything from the overhook side, the underhook side, escaping the top hook first on both sides, escaping the top hook first on both sides, recapturing our partner's back when they beat us at the head and shoulders first, and then progressions on your partner beats you in one area and you can recover easily, to your partner's almost completely out, and how can we hit like kind of a last ditch effort to reclaim our partner's back and get back to a winning position. So we covered every possible scenario pretty much on recovering from your partner trying to escape. All right, so now we've covered the control aspect of the back. We need to go into finishing. Okay, control that leads to submission. So before we start the finishes in the back, we're going to start to go into a little recap on what we're trying to accomplish. Okay. Once again, we're looking to expose the asymmetry in the human body. The fact that the human body is very poorly set up to deal with threats from behind it, but very equipped to deal with threats coming from in front of it. Okay, when I'm behind her, she has no ability to use pushing methods of explosion to escape. So you can very easily control someone much bigger and more explosive, more athletic than you when you're on their back. And in addition, they pretty much have no real offense when you're on their back, and this varies greatly from when you're in front of someone, whether you're leg locking them or in closed guard, whatever the case is, they always have some kind of counterattack. And that's just simply not true when you're on your partner's back. When they escape, of course, and they go through transitions to get out, they can obviously go to attacks, but when you're on your partner's back, they have no real forms of attack. All right. When we're behind our partner, we're always, again, looking to get a strangle hand across and to trap our partner's hands. Okay. The more hands we can trap, the better we're looking. We have to remember that even though we're in an advantageous position here, our partner still has 2 defensive hands and her jaw fighting against just my single 1 offensive hand. Okay? So if we can get to a 1 versus 1 or a 1 versus none situation, it's always much better. If I can trap one of my partner's hands, so it's one of my offensive hands versus one of her defensive hands, that's better than having 2 of her defensive hands versus one of my offensive hands. But if I can get 2 of her defensive hands trapped versus one of my offensive hands where it's 1 versus none, now it's just my hand versus her jaw, and now we can easily get underneath the chin in most cases and get to a strangle for the win. All right, so what we're trying to do essentially is always look for ways to trap my partner's hands, at least for some period of time, until we can get a strangle hand across our partner's body to be able to go in. And even if the hands come free, if the strangle's locked, it won't make a difference, and then we can get to an eventual win. Okay, so those are some of our goals when speaking about finishing from our partner's back. So just a recap from what we started with hours ago at the beginning of the instructional. Now, again, we've touched on this back in the beginning of the series. I'm just going to recap it now before we go into finishing, so it's fresh in your mind. When we have our partner's back, just as there are differences controlling our partner from the underhook versus the overhook side, there are major differences in finishing our partner on the overhook and the underhook side. In general, it's much easier to punch a strangle hand in, assuming we can get a hand across the body from the overhook side. But it's much harder to trap hands reliably from the overhook side. Okay? From the underhook side, it's generally much easier to trap hands reliably, but much harder to actually punch a strangle hand in. Okay? Now let's take a look at why that is. When we're on the overhook side, we can only trap one of our partner's hands reliably. We can only trap our partner's primary defensive hand. Okay? Whether we trap with our hand versus their hand, or our legs versus their arm, whatever the case is, we can only trap one of their hands. She can always use her secondary defensive hand to pull my strangle hand down, so we're always fighting from a 1 versus 1 situation. 1 versus none, obviously, is the best, but that's kind of almost impossible to get from the overhook side. Assuming I can get past my partner's defensive hand, which again is harder, it's very easy for me to insert a strangled hand. The reason being, if I can get my hand across, my control hand can move very easily forwards and backwards. The prerequisite to being able to insert my hand behind my partner's head for a strangle is I need to be able to get my elbow to the same axis that my shoulder line lies on. So my 2 shoulders and my elbow have to form almost a straight line in order for me to be able to punch a strangle hand in. So the second I get my hand across, my elbow easily retracts, I shoot my hand behind, and now we go in for a finish. Okay? That's going to be harder than usual because my partner still has 1 defensive hand versus one of my defensive hands. So it's harder to trap her hands reliably, but much easier to actually punch a strangle in when I get a hand across. Now, working on the underhook side, things change. Now, because of the transition of our upper body grips, it's much easier to trap both my partner's hands reliably. I can trap both her secondary defensive hand and her primary defensive hand. Okay? But when I get a hand across my partner's neck, now I run into an issue where I have to retract my elbow to the same axis as my shoulder line. So when I go to pull my elbow free, if I just pull my elbow out, I relinquish head positioning, which we all know is very important, and now my partner can take her head out to the floor, and now she's gone out and away from me. So the question is, once I have both my partner's hands trapped reliably, how can I lock a full strangle from here without giving up head positioning and getting my shoulders to the same axis as my elbow? That's the question here. Because right now, when I go to pull my elbow back to my shoulders, I can't. It runs into the floor. And if I pull my elbow back, then my partner beats me with head positioning, and now she's free. So the underhook side is much easier to trap my partner's hands reliably, but harder to actually punch a full strangle in and actually lock your hands together to get to a finish. All right, so there's key differences on each side. One side is easier to trap hands, but harder to get to a strangle, and one side is easier to get to a strangle, but harder to actually get past the defensive hands. So let's take a look at how to deal with both of these sides. So just very briefly, we're just going to look at the difference between straight wrist grips and cross wrist grips. In general, we pretty much exclusively use straight cross wrist grips from the overhook side. We don't really use too much cross wrist gripping unless we're going to use a figure four backhand arm for control purposes. But in terms of trapping arms, we pretty much only use straight wrist gripping from the overhook side. Whereas on the underhook side, we use both straight wrist gripping and cross wrist gripping and double cross wrist gripping to look to control and to trap our partner's arms. Okay, so just so you have an idea of what we're going to be doing, most of what we're doing from the overhook side is only straight gripping to trap arms. But cross and double cross wrist gripping from the underhook side is going to be very important and very useful in your success in your journey to trap both of your partner's arms successfully and capture one of the arms with a leg, one of the arms with a hand, so you have one of your hands offensively to fight just against your partner's jaw and to get underneath the chin and go through for a win. All right, so one side we're dealing primarily with straight wrist grips, and the other side we're dealing primarily with cross wrist gripping, with some addition of straight wrist grips as well. This is very, very important before we begin. The most important thing that you can do to stop your opponent from escaping is to constantly threaten your ability to finish them at any point during the match. If your opponent is only focused on escaping the position and you're only focused on holding the position, you're going to A, get very tired, and number two, B, never going to finish your partner. All right? So we have to focus on making our opponent deal with not getting finished and not just trying to escape. All right? So we should always be playing a dilemma between trapping our partner's hands and attacking the neck constantly. Okay? So if we just play live from here for 10 seconds or so, when she goes to try to escape, you see how I'm always looking to harass her hands with my hands? So the entire time, I'm either threatening a neck or I'm looking to trap arms. I'm looking to secure her arms in some way or threaten a finish so that she's worried about not just escaping, but she's worried about not getting finished. Okay? If I go to attack her neck and she pulls my hand down, for example, now she gives me a cross wrist and I can trap her arm. All right? If I go to trap her arm and she is so worried about me not trapping the arm, let's say I have a cross wrist, for example, and she goes to bridge to not allow me to trap the arm, our neck comes up, and now I can go in and start to finish with a strangle. So there's always a dilemma between attacking your partner's neck when they defend the hands and trying to trap the hands when they're defending the neck. So if I go to get a cross wrist and she goes to bridge and I can't get my leg up and over, now the chin comes up. If I go to get a hand in place and she uses her secondary hand, for example, pull my hand down, now we come in and we attack the neck, she defends the neck, and now she gives me the hand to trap, and now we can go into attacks there. And the whole time, you want to make sure that your partner is not worried about escaping. They're worried about not getting finished. There should be There should be a constant threat of submission danger from the time you get to your partner's back to the time the match ends. Your partner should never be here. Your partner has two defensive hands in place, and you're just holding your partner as hard as you can. Now when she goes to escape, she's only worried about the escape. Trying to get her head out to a good position, and now she can go into all of her escapes here. But the second she goes to escape, if I'm here, go ahead. If I'm fighting, see now she's defending the strangle. Now she's not worried about a head position. Now she's not worried about anything else. She's worried about getting this hand off of her neck. And now she gets to pull that hand down. That's where all my attacks start now. Now we're ready to go into all of our finishes from there. Okay? So it's important that you, one, always play a dilemma-based game between attacking your partner's neck and trapping your partner's hand. They go hand in hand. And that your partner's never worried about escaping the position, and they're always worried about not getting finished. Because obviously if they get finished, the match is over. So your partner should always be worried about a viable threat of submission and not worried about getting their back to the floor or clearing your hooks or whatever the case is. So now let's talk about the flaw of one-on-one grips. And we'll put it in context after we explain it. With any one-on-one grip, the strength of the grip is in the direction where the four fingers are. So for example, if I try to free my hand and I pull it towards my fingers, I'm never gonna break the grip. If I go down to my palm, obviously it runs into my hand, not gonna break the grip. And if I go towards my thumb, that's never gonna break the grip either. The only way that I can separate a one-on-one grip is by moving my wrist in between the space between my fingers and my thumb. Okay, specifically the middle finger and the thumb. Only when I move my wrist between that space will my hand come free. In any other direction, it won't come free. All right? So in a combat situation, my partner is going to have defensive hands in place, like so. And her primary hand is always going to be utilizing a one-on-one grip. My goal when attacking my partner's back is to constantly challenge the flaw of the one-on-one grip, the space between the fingers and the thumb. If I can constantly challenge that small space, it will be incredibly easy to separate your partner's grips and your partner's hand from your own wrist. If I push, for example, into my partner's four fingers, you're never going to separate your partner's grip from your hand. Okay, we'll talk about this more in a minute. But if I expose the space between my partner's thumb and the fingers when she goes to hold on tight, you can break your partner's grip incredibly easy and always threaten your partner's neck from the start to the finish. So because we know what the flaw of a one-on-one grip is, between this thumb and the middle finger, we can always now look to challenge the space between the fingers to always look to separate your partner's primary defensive hand from your own strangle hand. And if you can do that, that's going to instantly increase the percentages of the amount of times that you can get your strangle hand at least to your partner's far shoulder. Okay? Your goal is to get your hand as far up behind your partner's back as possible so that we can eventually have a full false grip over the back of our partner's trap muscle and our wrist connected to our partner's neck. Right, the further my hand can come up to the shoulder, that's where my hand wants to be. The further she can keep my hand down towards the opposite hip, as we spoke about, that's where she wants to be. So by challenging that space between the fingers, when she goes to pull that hand down towards the wrist, if I can separate that grip and get my hand up to the shoulder, I'm already winning the race. All right, that's going to be much easier for me to get breakthroughs and eventually get through into finishes. So you're always challenging the space between the fingers and trying to separate your partner's primary defensive hand from your strangle hand. So let's take a look at head positioning when I'm going to finish my partner from any given situation. It's very important that my strangle hand be on the opposite side of my head. Okay? This seems instinctual when you do it, but you see a lot of people actually do this wrong. For example, when people lock palm to palm finishes and they go to finish, their head ends up being on the same side as the strangle arm. And then you lose all the ability to actually finish your partner and you lead them into an escape. Okay, where they can easily take their head out to the floor and now they're gone. If at any point my head drifts to the same side as the strangle arm, you're always dooming yourself to failure. Now I have no ability to rotate behind my back, I have no ability to finish with the proper mechanics, and your partner's always going to be able to easily move the head out between the space where your head just was, and now there's no strangle. If you're on the underhook side and you lock it in the wrong, you put your head on the wrong side, and your head doesn't wedge your partner's head in place, now she's not only out of the strangle, but she's escaping the control of the back altogether. You have to make sure that you have a wedge on both sides of your partner's head. One being my arm on one side, and the second being my head. So now, mechanics aside, I can close a circle around my partner's neck. So when she goes to move out and away from me, it's impossible. The same thing about closing a circle around my partner's hips. I always want a closed circle around my partner's hips in some way so that she can't escape and move out and away. If I open the circle around the neck, now my partner can easily escape. So while it seems obvious to most of you, you still see some high-level people finishing with their head on the wrong side. Your head and your strangle hand have to be on opposite sides of each other so that you can close a circle fully around your partner's neck, lock it up, and then the mechanics come in the correct way. Whereas even if you managed to keep your opponent controlled and they didn't escape when you had your head and your strangle hand on the same side, the mechanics would be all wrong and you wouldn't be able to finish them anyways. So it's very important your head and strangle hand are on the opposite sides. So now let's look at a simple set of grip breaks, which are very basic, but are going to be absolutely crucial to you being able to constantly challenge your partner's primary defensive hand by hitting constant grip breaks and threatening your ability to get your hand across your partner's far shoulder and having your partner have to do a series of grip fights to be able to pull your hand down to not get finished. Right? Now we understand the weakness of one-on-one gripping. We're going to be behind our partner just for the drill, and she's going to have two defensive hands in place. Okay, we're going to be on her knees, she's going to be sitting behind us, or sitting in front of us. Now, my partner has two defensive hands in place. We've all been in situations where we get to our partner's back, maybe our partner's much stronger than us, we're there for minutes at a time, and we feel like whatever we do, not only can we not even threaten our partner with getting a hand across, we can't even break the initial grip. And you feel like your forearms are getting exhausted, you can't do anything. You're in the best position in the sport, you just can't finish your partner from here. Can't even attempt to finish your partner. If we can constantly challenge the weakness of your partner's one-on-one grip, it's going to be much easier. So the first thing we're going to look to do, have just our partner's primary defensive hand in place, we're going to look at the positioning of our hands. If my hand right now faces palm down towards the floor, and I start trying to break my partner's grip, most people tell you pull up on the arm, push down on your hand, and separate your partner's grip. Okay? That's great at lower levels, but when you get to start getting to higher level people, that's difficult because your partner squeezes very tight, and when you go to separate your partner's hands, you're pushing into her four fingers. That's the strength of her grip. So when my palm faces down, I gotta break that grip. It's not an easy thing to do. So the first grip break we're gonna do is very simple. I'm gonna take my palm and I'm gonna rotate it towards my partner's chest. When my palm rotates towards my partner's chest, now you notice her hand is in a different position relative to my wrist. When I push out and away now, it pushes directly into space between her thumb and her finger, like so. So now her thumb and her fingers move positioning. Right now I'm pushing into her four fingers. When I rotate my palm towards her chest, right now I'm pushing in between the space between her thumb and her middle finger, like so. Now I can constantly get my hand up to the shoulder, which forces her secondary hand now to come back and either strip my hand or pull my hand down, or it goes to some defensive reaction where she's worried now about not getting finished rather than escaping the position. Okay, so that's the first grip break. She has her hands in tight, our palm starts facing down, we go to a back head and arm, we lock up like so, we come in, we rotate our palm towards our partner's chest, and we strip the grip off. We punch a hand up. We strip the grip off, we punch a hand up. We strip the grip off, we punch a hand off, just by simply rotating our palm towards our partner's chest. Now, you're gonna come in contact with people who know that you're trying to do this. And they know that if they expose the weakness of the one-on-one, they're going to have their grip broken and having a submission being challenged. So what many people will do is as you're gonna rotate your hand, they won't hold on for dear life with their primary defensive hand. What they'll do is they'll release the tension in their hand and let your hand internally rotate inside of their hand. So instead of holding onto my hand tight and having this happen, she'll let me rotate and then I'll come up to a position like so. Where now, as I go to break the grip, my palm faces towards her, it becomes difficult now because when I go to punch my hand straight down with my palm facing towards her, I run back into the grip of her 4 fingers, like so. But when I rotate my hand back in the opposite direction, now I move in between that space. Okay? If you've seen the match with me versus Cyborg, he has a 2-on-1 with from Kronos Hashiguchi, completely different situation. Because of 2-on-1, I have to expose the weaknesses of each one of his 1-on-1 grips. Okay, it's the same thing here. This is he had a 2-on-1 on my hand like so. I have to individually deal with the weakness of 1-on-1 grip and hit misdirectional, hit change in direction in the positioning of my elbow. So if I just pull my arm straight back, it's impossible. But if I go up and down and up and down and up and down, that's how you break the grip. Where you, each time, individually expose one of the weaknesses of one of the hands. So I go pinky up, and I expose the weakness of this hand. Then I go pinky down, and I expose the weakness of this hand. Then I go pinky up, and I expose the weakness of the other hand. It's a similar concept when we're behind our partner, and she is a 1-on-1. I start in one direction, I expose the weakness of that grip. If she counters me, then I go back in the opposite direction. So now I go pinky down to break the grip initially. Now when she goes to change her hand positioning to counter, I go pinky up and I separate the grip. And now we punch across. So if she holds on tight, we go in. 1, we separate. If she loosens her hand, where now as I go to peel the grip off, she holds tight, it's impossible. I go back the other way and it comes off very easily. So it's a pinky up, pinky down, pinky up, pinky down dilemma. So as she goes to hold on tight, the grip comes off easy every time. As she goes to hold on loosely and she goes to readjust the grip to protect the flaw of her 1-on-1, where now I'm going to strip the grip off and it's very, very difficult. Now when I go back the other way, it's embarrassingly easy to strip the grip off. Now we go over the hand and we catch. So as she goes to fight with just the primary defensive hand, she's going to try to adjust or hold whatever she wants to do. She's trying to hold on for dear life for my hand. We're in a live situation. And we can get to a win. We can constantly challenge our partner's primary defensive hand by just using a simple yet effective multi-directional grip breaking series where we go palm, pinky up, pinky down, pinky up, pinky down, pinky up, pinky down, depending on where my partner's hand is. Always challenging the space between the thumb and the middle finger. The grip breaks we just looked at are the bread and butter of what you're going to be doing most of the time. All right, that's assuming your opponent has hands down by the far hip and doing everything they should be doing. There are going to be times where you can get your hands to a position where they drift up towards your partner's shoulder. So she has 2 defensive hands in, and you can get your hands up high by the shoulder. In general, a good cue to go for this grip break is whether or not you can get your hands past the center line. Okay? I want my hand to be on the left side of my partner's body across the center line. She wants my hand to be on the right side of her body, in this case, down by the right hip. Okay? If I can get my left hand across the center line, it's usually a good cue for going in and locking our hands in a 10-finger grip. If my partner makes a strong body and her hands are way down, or her hands are way down by the hip, I can never actually lock my hands effectively to be able to break my partner's grip. But the further our hands drift up towards the shoulder, the easier it is for me to lock my hands and the weaker her grip gets. So when she locks up tight here, you notice it's not possible for me to even lock my hands. But the second we go in here, and now my hands move up towards the shoulder, when she goes to lock her hands tight now, I can always lock my hands in a 10-finger grip. So when my hands cross the center line, this is usually a good cue to lock our hands in a 10-finger grip like so. Now, when she goes to lock on tight, I take my 2 wrists and I just simply roll them forwards, and I take my top hand pinky up towards the ceiling. I separate my partner's hands. And now I immediately punch my partner's hand down and practice getting our hand up and over the shoulder for the win. So if you ever see yourself in a situation where our partner is being lazy and we can drift our hands up towards the shoulder, we immediately go in and lock our hands in a 10-finger grip. Now when she goes to defend and keep that thumb inside, the simple rolling of our 2 hands forward and raising the pinky up towards the ceiling will take our partner's hand off and we can go in for the win. If your hands are way down by the hip, it's never going to work from here. If she makes a strong body, it's impossible. But if the hands come up high, up by the shoulder, across the center line, you can use this every single time to always threaten getting a hand up to the shoulder and breaking through for a victory. There's always a lot of discussion on how to actually properly place a rear naked into position. We're going to go over how we actually lock a strangle on our partner. Okay, the first thing I'm going to show you, this did not work in 1995. It's not going to work today. Okay? The second you expose your hand to your partner, they're going to grab a 2-on-1, they're going to take it over their head, and then they're going to be halfway to an escape. Okay? You always have to make sure that your partner can't access the hand, your control hand, that's trying to be punched behind your partner's head. Okay? So when I actually go to lock a strangle, I want to do everything I can to stop my partner from getting both my strangle hand and my control hand. Okay? You have to understand that there are 2 races that we're trying to win. Okay? The first race is, can I get my hand across my partner's center line and over the shoulder? If yes, can I win that race? If yes, and I can win that race, can I get my hand connected before my partner gets to my strangle hand? So in other words, whoever can get to the strangle hand first is going to win the second race. If I can win the first race by taking my hand across, then there's victory for me. If I can get to my own strangle hand before she can get to my strangle hand, then I'll win the second race. If she can get to my strangle hand before I can get to my strangle hand, she can always pull my hand down and reset her defensive hands. But if I can get my own hand to my strangle hand before she gets there, and now she goes to throw her hand up, now my strangle hand is covered. And now I can easily throw my hand behind my partner and my partner's head and easily win that battle. So if I can win the first race of getting our hand across, that's great. The second race occurs when my partner's hands, either, depending on how far my hand is across, either secondary, if it's here, or primary, if it's up here, hand coming up and pulling my hand down. If I can win the second race, then I can go in and easily get the win. Now, we actually go to lock a strangle from here. We need to get our hand up and above our partner's shoulder. So we go in. We try to align our partner's chin. Obviously, it can't be perfect every time. We try to align our partner's chin with the crease of our elbow, like so. Now we take a false grip over the back of our partner's neck, and we cover initially the hand with our own chin. So that now, when our partner goes to grab that strangle hand, it's covered by our own chin. Now, as we go to take the chin off, we replace the chin with the hand. So there's at no point when the hand gets up here, at no point is there a space for my partner to reach up and pull that hand down. Okay? If my chin doesn't cover the hand, my partner can always catch that hand and pull the hand down. So I cover the chin. As she goes to pull that hand down, even if her hand is there, as she goes to pull that hand down, my chin rises and I replace the hand with my own hand. Now I go hand to hand, wrist to wrist, and then I shoot my hand behind my partner's head. I straighten my fingers. I don't want to have a full fist because then you get caught on the back of your partner's head. You want to create a slim hand that can slide easily behind your partner's head, so you don't hit the back of your partner's neck and head and get caught halfway in. A lot of times this will happen if you have a full fist made. I want to be able to shoot through and all the way to the opposite side. We go wrist to wrist, and now as we shoot through, our fingertips open and our bicep slides into place. I don't reach for my bicep, I just slide my bicep into my fingertips and we lock. Okay? And then we're ready to go. So we cover, we go hand to hand, wrist to wrist, and then as we go to shoot everything in, fingertips connect to the bicep, now we have a full strangle locked. Okay? Now this is not going to work. We come across, we cover, we replace, hand over hand, wrist over wrist, and we shoot the bicep in. We make sure that the back of our hand is connected to the back of our partner's head. Okay? The reason being, if we go palm to the back of the head, your partner can reach over, and it makes it easier for her to grab your thumb line, like so, and pull the hand in front of the head. If you go palm to the back of the head, your partner has no lever to catch. There's no thumb to catch. It's only your pinky. So when your partner goes to reach and grab your pinky, there's nothing to pull there. You can't access the pinky. When she goes to pull and if she catches the thumb line, now she has a strong pulling point where she can pull forward, and now she can pull the arm up and over the head. So we always shoot everything in, we come in here, we shoot it behind, and the back of our hand connects to the back of our partner's head. And that's how we lock a perfect strangle when we're going in and going against high-level people and making it work. So before we start, just to let you guys know, this is the third time I tried to film this clip. First time, the SD card filled up. The second time, the camera overheated. If anything else happens, you guys just aren't fucking seeing this clip. I'm just gonna leave it out of the video. All right, so let's take 3. We are looking at a more combat realistic situation here where we're down on the hip, we're on the overhook side, and all the things we've just previously looked at are applicable right from here. Any of the grip breaks, or we strip our partner's grip with multi-directional grip breaks or use S-grip to peel our partner's hands apart. We're looking to, of course, disrupt our partner's primary hand and get our hand across to the far shoulder. Okay, now, as we spoke about before, once we can get our hand to the far shoulder and win the first race, it's easy to lock a strangle by pulling our control hand out because we can retract our elbow to our shoulder line. The issue is we can't trap both of our partner's hands reliably, so our partner can always use her secondary defensive hand to disrupt my hand in some way. Now, there's 2 ways my partner can grab onto my hand. First is at the wrist. If she grabs my wrist, this will only delay my ability to strangle her. It will stop my wrist from coming across, but it won't stop my elbow from coming across and going up, bringing my hand up to the shoulder and being able to lock a strangle. We'll deal with that now. If she grabs my thumb line, on the other hand, and pulls my hand all the way down, now this will stop both my wrist and my elbow from shooting across, and there's no way I can ever strangle her. Just know that most of the people you train with, ranging from white belts to world-class black belts, are going to grab your wrist. Okay, it's just how it's going to happen. So when my partner grabs my wrist, we're going to use a finger walk method. Okay, it's much more effective to use a finger walk method rather than a lifting method. If I lift my hand off my partner's chest and just try to shoot my hand in, I'm just basically, we're in a muscling contest and she's pulling my hand down, I'm trying to shoot my hand up, and we're both going to get exhausted, but it's not really efficient. Okay? What I'm looking to do is use a finger walk method to get my hand up and across. Now, the directionality of force is very important. What I don't want is to try to be walking my hands up to the shoulder. While it is true that eventually my hand has to be at my partner's shoulder in order for me to finish her, again, we're trying to bring our elbow as far across as we can. Okay? She's stopping my wrist from coming across and up to the shoulder, but she's not stopping my elbow from coming across and up to the shoulder. So when I finger walk, I don't bring my fingers up towards my partner's shoulders. What I'm looking to do is to bring my fingers out and over towards my partner's elbow instead. If I try to walk my fingers just up to the shoulder, it'll be very difficult and end up here, which won't really suffice. And now when I take my hand out, she can easily access my hand with her primary hand and pull my hand back down, and now we're back to square one. Okay? So what I'm looking to do is to walk my fingers somewhere between my partner's elbow and my partner's shoulder. Not so far where I'm walking out in the wrong direction, not so far up towards the shoulder where I can't actually get there, but somewhere in the middle of my partner's arm, right around the tricep here. Okay? So what I'm looking to do is, as she goes to pull my wrist down, we just walk over, 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 and we bring our elbow as far across as we possibly can. So as we go to walk, we get to about here, and now only when our elbow is far across towards our partner's center line then we bring our wrist up to our partner's neck, and now we have a strong connection of everything we need with our false grip up and over the neck, our chin to our hands, and we're ready to go. Now from here, when I go to extract my control hand, I make sure that there's the smallest amount of distance possible between my strangle hand and my control hand. I don't want to extract my hand here, so there's a huge distance I have to cover to get to my own hand. I pull the hand up, and now the second my hand comes out, it's right there. Hand over hand, wrist over wrist, fingertips to bicep. Now we're ready to go in and strangle. So we use any one of these grip breaks, whether our hands are up here or hands are down here, my partner's holding it nice and tight. We strip our partner's grip, and we deal with our partner's secondary hand when she grabs over my wrist. Now, as she goes to pull that wrist down, I use a finger walking method where I walk across to my partner's top of my partner's tricep and the lower part of her shoulder, and that brings my elbow across. I don't try to bring my wrist up to the shoulder. When she goes to hold on tight, a lifting method is useless, and a finger walking method will only get me to about here. So I go across first with the elbow. My elbow comes off the floor. So when she goes to pull that hand down, I walk across, and now my elbows lifted off the ground and near the center line. Now, when she goes to pull that wrist down, I move it in towards the neck, and we cover. Now I raise the control arm, I let go, and as we slip through, we're ready to go and punch a strangle in for the win. Okay, so if my partner grabs my wrist, we use a finger walking method to get our hand up first, diagonal, up towards the top of the tricep, bottom of the shoulder, and only then, when the elbow moves towards the center line, do we punch the hand behind the back. So now we have an opponent who's more advanced, and when we go to trap the primary hand, the secondary hand comes over and catches our thumb line like so. All right, so now we have a real issue where if we don't do anything, we're not going to be able to actually strangle our partner. So we come in, I strip my partner's grip off, I go to catch my hand up and over the shoulder, and she grabs over my thumb line and pulls my hand down. Okay? Whenever I see this, what I have to start to look to do is, it's not as effective, obviously, we go basic to more advanced, but what I have to start to look to do is to take my hand, relinquish the grip on my partner's primary hand, and quickly strip her hand off, like so. As I strip my partner's hand off, the luxury that you have, okay, we talk about trapping hands and things later, we'll talk about that, but for right now, the luxury that you have when you go to strip your partner's hand off is that as your partner goes to pull your hand down, we can pull our hand up higher than we did previously. So now, when our partner goes to put her primary defensive hand in, it's hard for her to get a thumb inside here, okay? When she goes to pull my hand down, when it's 1 versus 1, she can easily pull my hand down to the floor. But when I catch the second hand, now I can pull the hands up as high as I want. Now, when I go to strip this grip, I can't just pull into the 4 fingers. I have to stabilize with my left hand and pull slightly backwards towards the camera with my right hand. Now, when my partner goes to insert that primary hand, I raise the elbow slightly so that now her thumb can't punch inside quite yet, and now it gives me an opportunity to shoot my hand across and cover. And now from here, we come inside and we get our hands into position. So when we strip our partner's hand out, she goes with the secondary hand and she goes over the thumb line. This is no good. So right from here, we immediately catch over our partner's hand and we pull everything up to the shoulder. If I try to do my work down here and I strip the secondary hand, her primary hand is going to come right back in, and now we're back to square one. Okay? That's no good. So I want to make sure that as the second I grab her hands, I yank the hands up by the shoulder. So now when she goes to insert that hand defensively, it's not an easy thing to do. From here, I stabilize the hand, and I just take my hand back and away an inch or two. And now as I pummel around, when she goes to put that hand in, I lift the elbow. So when she goes to put her defensive hand in, she can't really capture my wrist. And now we come in and we catch. Now the issue is I don't want her reaching up with her primary hand and catching my hand. So the second I have my hand across the center line, up to my partner's shoulder, we immediately switch back to the primary hand so she can't capture my strangle hand. Now we cover, we extract, and we strangle. Okay? So she's in defensively, we peel, she catches. As she's supposed to pull my hand down, I catch and we pull everything up. Now she tries as best she can to insert that hand. She can't on my hand because her hand is, one hand is covering my hand, so she has no access to my hand down here. And when she goes to go to my wrist, it's almost a useless grip. And now as I peel, go back towards the camera, I stabilize left hand, right hand peels, and now we shoot, we move back to the primary hand. Now we yank that primary hand up, we extract, we replace chin with hand, and we're in for the win. And so 2 great ways to deal with your partner's secondary hand if your partner grabs with the wrist or with the thumb line. We have the first race, which is getting our hand across and up to the shoulder. Okay? Now my partner's secondary hand pretty much has no access of getting to my strangle hand. The issue is, when I release my partner's primary hand, there's always a chance that as my hand comes out, that hand shoots up and catches either my thumb line, which is worst case scenario, or at least my wrist to pull it down far enough where the secondary hand can now reach over the thumb line, pull that hand down, and then feed back to a primary defensive hand. Okay, this is no good, obviously. Whenever I see my partner reaching up and trying to capture my wrist, we use an inside wrist grip to capture my partner's wrist. So now, as she goes to pull my hand down, we catch and we strip that grip off. Now from here, we can easily take our hand up, and because our hand is in the top hand position, and my hand is physically on top of her hand, it's physically impossible for her hand to reach my hand before my hand does. There's a shorter distance from my hand to my hand, and we're both moving at the same speed. So as we both go to race, my hand always wins. Nothing she can do from here is going to beat me. As we both go quickly to move to the hand, ready, 1, 2, 3, go. I always win. And now I'm ready to finish. So in the event that your partner beats you to your own strangle hand, you win the first race, you beat your partner's secondary hand, but when you relinquish the control of the primary hand, she beats you to the strangle hand, we use an inside wrist grip to punch our partner's hand down, and now you're guaranteed to win the race because you have control of the top hand positioning. So now when you both go to race to the top hand, because your hand is physically on top of your partner's, when she goes to grab your hand again, number 1, she can't until I let go, and number 2, when she goes to, I always win that battle. Now we can punch our hand in and get to a win. So if we can win the first race of 1 getting our hand across, perfect. We look at how to beat our partner's secondary hand from the overhook side. But winning the second race means that we have to get our hand to our own strangle hand before she gets her hand to my strangle hand. And if she wins that race, this is no good. So if she does win that race, I punch this hand off, replace hand over hand, and punch my hand in for a win with a strangle. So now let's look at trapping hands, okay? We're talking about these 2 races per se. We have to win in order to get to victory. Okay, now by races, I'm not implying we have to be fast to do these. So just we're racing to get our hand across our partner's center line, and she's racing to keep our hand down by the head. There's nothing to do with speed or athleticism. It's just the words I'm using. Okay. Now, when we look to come in and strangle our partner, the sooner we can eliminate and trap my partner's primary defensive hand, the easier time we're going to have. So everything we've done so far has been from a position where we haven't trapped our partner's hand. All right. So let's backtrack a little bit and look at ways that we can trap our partner's hand either before we punch a hand up, as we're punching a hand up, or after we've already punched the hand up to our partner's shoulder. Okay. If our partner has defensive hands in place, the first thing we can look to do is the second we break our partner's grip, like so, as we're fighting to get a hand up, we play a dilemma, again, between trapping an arm and dealing with the neck. So as we're looking to finger walk up, our partner's worried about the secondary hand coming up and pulling my wrist down and getting to my thumb line. I'm punching my partner's hand down towards her own hip, like so. So that now I can take my left leg and I can fire it up and over my partner's hand like so. I want to make sure that when I cross, my heel crosses over my partner's wrist. Now I lock my two ankles over my partner's top hip, like so, and I pinch my two knees together and I pull my two heels to my butt. So that now my partner goes to free the hand, it's trapped. When we both go to free our hands, only my hand comes free and her hand stays trapped. Now when she goes to use that primary defensive hand, it's completely useless. It's trapped behind my two legs. So now what we have is only her primary defensive hand, or a secondary defensive hand. When she goes to pull my wrist down or pull my thumb line down, I can easily strip that grip off, punch my hand up, and now I can take as much time as I want, because when she goes to access my hand now, that secondary hand, it's too far behind the back. And now we can easily go in for the win and finish our partner. So that's the first way. So before we get a strangle hand across our partner's neck, or as we're doing it, we strip the grip off initially, and as we're fighting to get that hand across, she goes to pull my hand down, I'm punching this hand down towards my partner's hips. Now we fire our top leg up and over, we catch 1 and 2. It's very important that when you fire your initial leg over, you have a long hook with your bottom leg. We always talk about keeping closed circle around your partner's hips with our two legs. When you open up that circle, now it gives your partner an ability to step over your bottom hook, and now she's gone. So it's imperative that when I go to throw my leg up and over my partner's wrist, I move to a long hook with my bottom leg, and now we throw the leg. So now when my partner goes to step over my bottom hook, it's a very difficult thing to do. And now we reclose the circle by crossing our two ankles, taking our heels to our butt, and pulling our knees together. When we both go to free our arms, only mine comes free. Now we can easily deal with our partner's secondary hand and win this battle. Okay, so that's the first way to trap. Now, let's assume that we get a hand up to our partner's shoulder, and she gives us issues after we've won the first race, where we get our hand up to our partner's shoulder. As we go to retract our hand, our partner now grabs our hand and looks to pull our hand down. We use an inside wrist grip, and this time, instead of having an underhook controlled hand to trap our partner's hand, we punch our partner's hand down with the inside wrist grip, and now we throw our leg up and over. So now from here, as she goes to move this hand around, we trap. Now we cross, and now as we both go to pull our hands out, again, only mine comes free, we punch everything into place. So first, we trap the hands as the hand's coming up. So we punch the hand down. As our secondary hand doing the work, we create a long hook. Leg comes over, cross the ankles. As she goes to pull her arm out, we pinch the knees, back heel, and our hand comes free. Secondarily, we get a hand all the way across. We're close to a finish, but our partner grabs the hand. We punch this hand down, and now we throw our leg up and over, like so. Now from here, we cross the ankles. Our hand comes out. When she goes to take her hand out, stays trapped. Even now, if her hand stays trapped for a half a second and she gets it free, doesn't matter. All I need is that half a second to get my hand to my own hand and punch my strangle hand in, and I've easily won that battle. So 2 battles where we're going first from a position where we haven't gotten a strangle hand across, and second, we have gotten a strangle hand across, and our primary hand is interfering with my strangle hand. So now that we've covered how to trap our partner's hands, let's look at the 2 ways that we look to trap our partner's hands. There are 2 methods, trapping in front and behind our partner's back. Let's see if I can do this. Still trying to talk to you guys. When we trap our partner's hand initially, know that if your partner keeps her hand in front of her own body, it's going to be easy to trap our partner's hands, keeping our 2 feet in front of our partner's body. So if she tries to free her hand in any capacity in front of her own body, like pulling it up or trying to pommel it in front or under my feet, she stays in front of her own body, it's going to be relatively easy for me to keep her arm trapped. If she goes to pommel her hand behind her butt and behind her own back, now she can limp her shoulder forwards, bring her elbow forwards, and now the elbow will come free and your partner's going to escape. When I lock into my partner's body and trap an arm, I have to make sure that my knee stays above my partner's elbow. If my partner's elbow is above my knee, then her arm's free. So if she puts the hand behind the back, limp arms out, brings the shoulder forward, brings the elbow forward, now the arm is coming free. So it's my responsibility to make sure that I maintain the inside heel position relative to my partner's wrist. Meaning my heel has to stay inside of my partner's wrist. So if she goes to start pommeling behind the back, my responsibility is to have the sensitivity in my 2 feet where I can know this and follow her accordingly. So she takes her wrist. If I feel any disconnect of her wrist and my heel, this is no good. I have to make sure that my heel follows her wrist so that it can stay inside of her wrist the entire time. So that now my heel is physically inside my partner's wrist. It's in between her wrist and her body. And now I tuck my shoelaces in behind my partner's back, and I have a nice long hook, again, with my bottom leg. So now when she goes to limp arm out, it's simply impossible. When she goes to pommel her hand back in front of the body, it's also impossible. And now when she goes to move, it's pretty much useless, and you can easily finish your partner in a variety of ways from here. Okay? What you can't have happen is for your partner to have the hand in front of the body, you lose connection of your heel to their wrist, they go to pommel behind the body, which inevitably are going to escape if they do that, and then as they go to pommel behind the body, you try to follow, but you're late, and now her wrist comes inside of your heel. But you're here. Now, when you go to keep your partner's hand trapped, she goes to pommel out, and now she's free. So it's imperative, absolutely crucial, that I keep my heel inside my partner's wrist. So as she goes to pommel, I can follow her and lock my shoelaces in behind my partner's buttocks. And keep a strong back heel with my right leg, bottom hook in this case. So now when she goes to move around, it's impossible. And now if she chooses to bring her left arm back in front of the body, that's also impossible. And now this is final stages, she's getting finished. Okay? But at any point her wrist starts in front of the body, your heel has to be connected to her wrist at all times. If you feel any disconnect of her wrist and your heel, it's no good. The second she goes to move her heel behind the body, her wrist behind the body, I follow. And you can't force the wrist behind the body. People ask, well, why can't you just, if this is the best position, why can't you just put the wrist behind the back right from the beginning? Well, if she's trying to force the hand in front of her body, you can't pull it back there. You have to just go with the flow. If she keeps it in front of the body, you stay in front of the body with your legs. But if she goes behind the body, you follow behind the body with your legs. You can't force one or the other. Okay? So just some insight on trapping your partner's hands with your legs. If you stay in front of if your partner chooses to keep the hand in front of their own body, your legs stay in front of the body. Or if they go behind the back, you have to be inside the wrist with your heel and follow behind the back with your leg.